I've been editing my own films since I began directing in 2008. In 2020, I won my first award for editing on my short film, A Long Weekend. I wanted to share with you how I edited it. Edited it. You can find the full short film in the description of this video, but in case you haven't seen it, I'll explain the context of each scene as we go. Now, the scene I found most interesting to edit was the "Have you finished your homework" scene. Let's get to it. Here's how it plays out.
You finished all your homework?
Yeah.
All of it?
Mm-hmm.
Look at me. You finished your history?
Yep.
Math?
Mm-hmm.
Foreign language?
Yeah.
English paper?
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll check it all tomorrow.
Now, before we talk about editing, we first need to talk a little bit about cinematography. Usually, in a dialogue scene like this, we record the wide shot to establish what the room looks like, then we cut to medium over-the-shoulder shots as they talk back and forth. That's the most bare bones you can get. Or, if you want to spice things up a little bit, you can cut into close-ups as the conversation gets more intense, and then cut out to a wide shot as the conversation gets less intense or more awkward. With that in mind, I shot the scene with several different angles. Here I am in the original footage, and I had a general idea in my mind of how I wanted the scene to edit out, but just to be sure, I would shoot everything, all of the lines in every type of shot, just so that if I needed to change it up in editing, I could. So first I start with wide shot, medium shot, close up, a few takes of all of these, then the lead actress's medium wide, then her medium over the shoulder, then her close up. Now, how do you decide when you cut to which shot? What you usually do in editing a scene like this, start with a wide, then go to your medium shots, but I was trying to do a reverse on that, where I withhold a piece of the information, then reveal it to make a joke. In this case, I am withholding the fact that everybody else around her is working hard while she is on the computer. So instead of starting with the establishing wide shot of the scene, I start with her medium shot, so that way you just see her being lazy, cut to everybody else around her working hard. So now we go into the medium shots. What I first do after Mom's wide shot, I deliberately frame her next upcoming shot from underhand looking up at her, as if someone with more authority is looking down. So that way it kind of makes you feel a little bit intimidated. But before that, I have Ellie framed in just a straight-on shot, because that way it feels more like I'm comfortable where I am. She doesn't feel like she's being looked down upon yet, because she's zoning out. But at what point should I cut to Mom's shot? One thing you need to know about editing dialogue is you do not need to cut every time someone talks. Sometimes, it's more important to see the person's reaction to what is said.
You finished all your homework?
Yeah.
All of it?
Mm-hmm.
Look at me.
In this case, when Mom says all of it, it's more important to see that Ellie is ignoring it. Withholding from cutting to the medium shot right there also makes it feel more powerful if we cut to it when she says, "Look at me." Because if I cut to that shot too soon, it would lose its power. So moving on to the next shot, now I cut to Ellie's over-the-shoulder shot, which implies she's now joined in on the conversation. Before, she's zoning out, so I don't show an over-the-shoulder, but now when she actually starts listening, over-the-shoulder, she's now part of the conversation. Now the next shots I have to use are the close-ups. When should I cut to those? First, as she's just going back and forth between, you did this, yeah, you did this, yeah, I hold on the medium shots for a little bit until she starts getting even deeper to more assignments. Then I start cutting to closer up shots, implying she's closing in on me, she's closing in on me, ultimately landing on English paper, where I land on the closest close-up. The more you use a close-up, the less it means. So you want to save those close-ups for the really important lines to emphasize those. But Ellie doesn't want to show that she's worried about it, so I don't cut to the close-up there, I cut to her medium shot, pulling back out like she's trying to go, yeah, I'm cool with this. Now the conversation's pretty much over, so I cut back to the wide shot where we see Mom walk out, and in most situations that would be the end of the scene. You usually would end on your wide shot, but in this case, there was one more thing we had to show. Ellie's wide eyes implying, oh shoot. Now, doing this style of fast cuts is what fit the tone of this scene, but there are all kinds of other ways you can edit dialogue as well. Sometimes you don't even need to cut. I did this in the scene right after the parents came home. They're watching Ellie, thinking she's playing games or watching videos on her computer when actually she's doing homework. And they have this non-verbal interaction where I refrained from cutting until the mom and kids left the scene. You may notice in some movies by great directors like Spielberg that they'll often try to blend multiple types of shots into one, where instead of cutting to a medium shot, they'll have a character walk in closer to become a medium shot, or walk in closer to become a close-up, and then move around in the scene to change the over-the-shoulder, like character walks over here, walks around over here, depending on who we want to see talking. That single take style didn't fit this particular scene, but I did try to use it in other parts of the movie. There are a few instances where I do whip pans, where instead of cutting to each person talking, I whip pan back and forth between them in one take. Or seemingly in one take. I'm actually hiding cuts in between the whip pans because I didn't always land the pan each and every time, so I would need to cut between the best takes of each one, cutting on the pan so it seamlessly looks like one take. I once again tried to blend multiple shots into one by, instead of cutting when Ellie gets up, I just pull back with her and have the camera walk back as she's walking forward, so you can still see Dad in the background instead of cutting to a shot of him. Then what's more important to see is Ellie's reaction to what Dad said. Then as Dad walks away, keep Ellie in the middle of the shot, and we had one take. One time I actually did an entire scene of this film in one take, where Ellie's running through the hallway after the parents just came home and she's trying to find where the kids are. In that scene, it didn't really make sense to cut because it felt more like you're on this journey with her if you just followed her in one take, pan down when she's looking at the kids, and pan back up to her when she's reacting to it, and that way it feels like you're with her. What also helped that scene was shooting it in handheld. Most of the movie I would shoot on tripods or camera stabilizers so that all of the shots would be smooth. That way, the few moments I do use handheld, it will feel particularly chaotic. Let's rewind a bit and go to the very opening scene of the movie. In this scene, the parents are confronting Ellie on not doing her homework. Then, fun fact, when you start editing, you'll pause at just the right moments so that every once in a while, you'll find a shot like this. I hope the actress doesn't kill me for showing this. Withholding from cutting to the medium shot. Now, a little bit about the cinematography of this scene, because cinematography is going to determine how you edit the scene. I chose to do the scene just shooting straight on, parents looking into the camera, as if it's a point of view of Ellie. That framing was inspired by the director Wes Anderson, who does an awful lot of those characters doing dialogue by looking straight on into the camera, which gives it kind of a funny, quirky effect. And another thing that did for this scene was make it feel like you are in Ellie's shoes. That's how it would feel like having parents looking straight into your soul as you're having a confrontation. Not that I know what that feels like. What I did for Ellie's shot is just as symmetrically have her in the middle, while parents evenly on both sides of the frame, and I told the parents to scoot in closer to the frame so that way it kind of feels claustrophobic, because the more space somebody takes up in an over-the-shoulder shot, the more it feels like they are overpowering the situation. One person looked at that and asked me if I was using rule of thirds there. Coincidentally, they do land on the thirds line, but that's not what I was thinking when coming in to frame this shot. Because if all you're thinking is, well, I'm just going to throw stuff on a thirds line and call it good, then I could have done that from any different over-the-shoulder angle. I could have done it not only from here, but from over here, or over here, and so long as a parent lands on one third line and Ellie lands on another, it's rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is really an oversimplification of something a lot more complex. When you're framing a shot, you should be thinking not slap things on a third line, but how do we make this symmetrical? How do we balance the different things that are in this image? And how is the person going to feel while watching this? Now moving on to the hardest scene to edit. The homework montage. It was difficult because of the sheer number of shots I have to cut together, and the fact that I had no music to cut it to. Many times editors will use what's called temp music. That is, music they temporarily put into the timeline and edit to that. Then when the composer comes in, they might tell the composer to replicate what's in that temp music. I avoid doing that because composers hate it. Composers want to be able to do something original and not just be told to replicate something else, but when you use temp music, they can't because the pace of the edit has been done to that music, and then the director oftentimes falls in love with that temp music and wants it to sound just like it. And I don't want to give that kind of a hassle to my composer. You see that happy look on the composer's face? That's because I didn't use temp music. So I try to avoid the temp music love problem by just cutting what feels right even without music. A trick I use for feeling out where you should cut is play the clip, pause when it feels like it should cut, look at where the time is, play it again, pause where you feel like it should cut. If you do this 3 times and it ends up stopping around the same area, cut there. And as you go, you may be shaving frames, adding on frames, and a lot of making the edit feel smooth is just shaving off a frame here and there. There's not really a formula to do that, you just have to go based off of gut feeling that you'll develop after editing more and more stuff. A director who inspired a lot of the cinematography and editing of this scene is Edgar Wright. He does a lot of whip pans and whip zooms that I utilized in this montage. For example, in this shot right here, where she opens the math book and then we whip zoom into Ellie's mental to-do list, that's done by, 1, matching the speed of the whip zoom on the animation to the whip zoom speed on the shot in camera, then blending it together with this effect called directional blur, so that way it seamlessly merges those 2 shots. Most of the time though, it felt better to just do a abrupt cut instead of a whip zoom or whip pan. For example, as Ellie's doing her math problem here, she just writes the number 5, pulls it away, and slaps it into the bin. And what makes those kinds of cuts funny is that the moment you understand the point of a shot, cut. If I were to show the shots any longer than that, they wouldn't feel funny anymore. Earlier I talked about how sometimes you should withhold from cutting and shoot something in 1 take. And I did that here when Ellie's sister is introduced.
Ellie, can you please help me reach my crayons?
Not right now, I'm busy.
But they're too high up.
It didn't feel right to me to shoot it in 2 different shots, a shot of Ellie talking and the shot of Ellie's sister talking. So I thought it best to frame them both in the same shot. Which did make that shot difficult to film, because that meant my little sister, who plays the little kid, needed to remember a bunch of lines on the spot.
Ellie, can you help me reach the crayons?
No, not right now, I'm doing homework. Not right now, I'm busy.
But they're too up. Ellie, can you please reach my...
Okay, go back. You've almost got it. No, Danica. Okay, I got it.
The animation also played a big part into the editing, because as I'm animating, when I pan down, when I zoom out, zoom in, I'm thinking the same way I think when I'm editing. Does this match the pace of the previous shots before? Is this holding long enough so that you can read it, but not so long that we're there too long so it still feels comedic? And some might be interested to hear how I did that animation. I'm doing the special effects in After Effects. I first scanned a crumpled up piece of notebook paper. Then after I have the paper and text all laid out, I have to animate the text to look like it's being written. I did this with an effect called stroke. How that works is I first need to draw a mask around all the letters in a continuous line as it would be written. Then with the effect stroke, I turn up the brush size to completely cover that area of text, and then animate the start and end points to make it start revealing the text. So what the effect is doing is hiding the letters, then revealing them throughout the mask line. Now on to the second hardest scene to edit. The dinner scene. Now, contrary to the rest of the scenes that are more fast cut, this was supposed to be a slower scene that gives us a nice break from all the fast cuts. And not only does that give us a break from the previous scenes, but the comedy of this scene is just naturally slower. There are certain jokes that need to be fast to be funny, and there are other ones where it's exactly because it's taking a long time that it is funny. In this case, the fact that we're seeing her spend some time working on homework, getting distracted, and seeing the kids start going, I'm getting kind of bored. That wouldn't really work when done in a snappy, fast-cutting way. And that still caused some challenges in editing because the reactions weren't always as slow as what I needed them to be, so I would need to use retiming in editing to make them that long. An example of that is when Ellie first enters. She gets on the computer, and then I told her to look up a bit too soon. So I needed more time of her typing on the computer, and I did that by playing the shot backwards. To orient you in how I organize the editing timeline, in the bottom row here I have all of the original footage. Above that, if there were visual effects, this is where I put visual effects. In this case, we have stabilization, digital stabilization put on this shot. Then above that, I have all the color grading, which is turning the color from this into this in the program DaVinci Resolve, which is a topic for another day. But back onto editing. Showing the retiming on the footage, if I hit Command R, it will show you how long I made each shot. That's normal, 100% speed. But then here, negative 100% speed means I played it backwards. And I did that throughout the entirety of her typing. And I also needed to do it on some of the kid shots. Like, for example, right here. This is actually put in slow motion to 65%. And I needed to do that for a variety of reasons. One is because the kids rarely got their greatest performances on the same take. So oftentimes I would just need to go, well, we don't have the time to try to get them both do everything right on the same take, so we're just going to need to split screen the best of two different takes together. So for right here, my little sister does this looking up thing right here, like she's getting bored and looking away. I wanted to hold on that for longer before she gets up to walk away. So I put that in slow motion and then added an effect called optical flow. What that means, when we retime a 30 frames per second shot into 2 seconds, well, now it's only 15 frames per second because we just extended it, and optical flow guesses what is in between those frames and creates new frames. And then for Matthew's character, very rarely was he not monkeying around on the chair, and the only time I actually had of him sitting down was less than a second. So I needed to put that small little fraction of a second into slow motion, and again add optical flow, then split screen the two together. And I did that tactic in way more than just this scene. Another example that comes to mind is in the scene where the dad takes away Ellie's phone. I also needed more reaction time at the end of their take because this is slower than the rest of the scenes. And since we had been doing more snappy dialogue previously, there were quite a few times where the other character said the line sooner than what it needed to be in the edit. So I would fix that by having it start in normal speed, and then when I needed more reaction time at the end, would turn it into slow motion.
Come on.
So if you ever are editing something and are like, man, I wish I had more time on this shot, think outside the box. Slow motion. Now, when I was filming this shot, I had actually just set it up and I didn't tell everyone we're going for a take right now. I just saw Danica naturally sitting down and I'm like, capture it now! Hit record, and then as I was recording, she just started getting up and walking away. Although, in between that, somebody on set, I won't name who, thought it was funny to start waving their hand in front of the shot. And fortunately, it happened right in between Danica was getting up, so I was able to just cut out that hand waving in front of the shot and use the remainder of her walking away. The moral of this story is, there is a time to be funny, but it is never funny to wave your hand in front of the camera. Don't. And I was actually able to use that part of her walking away later on in the scene when she actually was supposed to walk away in the script, but I just planned on conveying that through sound effects. But was just able to take that and put it in slow motion, and it actually worked. Now, going out of order here, I'm going to rewind a bit to the cleaning the room scene.
Put your toys in the box.
No.
Put your toys in the box.
No.
Well, you know what? We're done.
No.
That's too bad.
I
We're
don't
putting toys in the box.
want
That's too bad. Come on.
This was the third hardest scene to edit. What made it difficult is I have to shuffle around when do I show each cleaning the room shot when. There are a bunch of different shots. How do I put this in a cohesive order that tells a story? In the shot when Ellie is physically grabbing Katie's arms to make her put toys away, there we got a bunch of different things said on different takes, all of them great.
You're gonna put your toys away.
No.
Come on. Well, that's too bad. We're putting toys in the box.
To.
Well, that's too bad. We're putting your toys away. We're done. Nope.
And as I'm looking at all these, I'm wondering, I don't want to pick just one of these takes, I want to use all of them. So that's what I did. I was able to do this by taking the audio from all of those takes and merging them under the main take. So what you see here in the editing timeline is a bunch of pieced together lines of dialogue from different shots. Then for the shot where the little brother dumps the bucket of ribbons, I had originally envisioned that being between Ellie convincing the little sister to put stuff away. As we were filming it, it took the actor of Timmy a bit more time than I expected to pull out the drawer, so I actually utilized that to my advantage by showing it in two parts. First, with him beginning to open the drawer, then after Ellie's making Katie put the toys away, then cut back to the little brother dumping the ribbons. And there I'm using a psychological trick I learned from Alfred Hitchcock in a famous interview where he says, if there is a bomb under the table and it is going to go off in 5 minutes, if you don't tell anyone it's going to go off and just wait for it to explode, you'll have about a few seconds of shock. But if you show the audience there's a bomb that's going to go off, now you have 5 minutes of tension. So I thought of that when I was editing this shot, and realized if I show the first half of him beginning to pull out the drawer, then we're starting to go, oh no, look, there's a drawer, he's gonna pull it out! Then when we cut back to Ellie, we're going, look over there! And then, when he dumps it, we're like, you missed it! And doing that creates more tension than if we had just started with, dump. And those were the most interesting parts of editing a long weekend. If you're making a film yourself, I hope this helps you win awards with your cinematography and editing. If it does, let me know in the comments. Take care, everyone.